Please rise, and we'll do a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Carla, if you'll do the roll call, please.
Robert Mueller.
Here.
Dina Kreitler.
Here.
Jan Brons.
Here.
Beth Caldwell.
Here.
Steph Grumminger. Kelly Fowler.
Here.
Laura Oliver.
Here.
Michael Hankins.
Here.
Kathleen Waltz.
Here.
Tom Couch. We have a quorum.
Thanks, Carla. I think on your packet you have an agenda for tonight. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Second by Mike. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? You also have in your packet the minutes from the July meeting. Take a minute to look at those.
What were the highlighted sections on the first page under draft and amended? Oh, that's how it was amended?
Yes.
I see. So who made a second?
There wasn't one.
There wasn't.
Can you read PPTX?
What should pull up another one?
That's it.
Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes?
I make a motion to accept them as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Who was the second? Beth? Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carries. Are we
Well, it doesn't seem to be reading anything.
go down your removable tools? Go down one. Click on that.
Is there an external mouse hooked up somewhere? 'Cause it doesn't seem.
No.
Okay.
Should do it.
I don't see any PowerPoint plans. Well, the good news is I brought printouts with me.
It's not on the drive.
Well, it doesn't seem to be picking up on it. Let me try it again.
Oh, sorry. Didn't even know we were throwing things.
So you just tap it.
Oops, I didn't mean for that.
Did you go to see?
No, I well, I went back to get it, and I resaved it, and I asked if I wanted to resave, and I said, like to override it, and I said, no. But just in case you had the older version of PowerPoint, I saved it as just a PPT, and I'll keep PPTs.
It should be in there. Yeah, it should.
Yeah, it should be.
That's where it should be.
Unless,
The rest of your stuff should be.
right. Well, luckily I brought hard copies. Okay,
Do you want to shut this off then? Or
it won't bother me, it's fine.
do you want
Oh, unless it bothers others. Full cord. Okay. Here are the highlights in writing, and I'll just verbalize the other items.
Move up a little bit to that.
Okay, so in particular, I wanted to give a quick recap on some of the adjustments that we're making in branding, guest relations, and outreach. One of those has to do with some of the new procedures that we implemented during Jour de Fête. And we're sort of the tip of the iceberg down at the Welcome Center. We had 667 visitors on Saturday, which exceeded previous numbers that in terms of when they started keeping records at the Welcome Center, and 375, which was obviously much lower Sunday than Saturday, and I think the shops probably experienced the same thing. Sunday was a slower day, but it was still better than any Sunday that we've had in recent memory. So it was pretty good for us. We changed a few things on opening ceremonies. I did feel that that the changes helped the crowd be more participatory in the opening ceremonies. They had better visibility to what was going on. We had a couple of challenges from a video standpoint, but I think next year that we can make some adjustments and have our video recording crews be just as comfortable as everyone else and still have the good logistics for the crowd. We moved it over to, for those who might not have been there at opening ceremonies, and I know a lot of you are busy with your businesses, but we moved it over to the end of the ramp and had a podium there so that everyone could clearly see who was speaking, and it wasn't, sort of like peering through the flags and the trees and the bushes trying to figure out what was going on. And I counted like a head count of the people in the crowd, and of course, thanks to the large number of Dunsies that were in the crowd. We had a lot of Dunsies and Delasues, but we had about 300 plus people at the opening ceremonies, which really drew a lot of people from the surrounding streets, so that was a good thing. We also did something different this time in terms of we used volunteers. I had several people that responded to a call for volunteers to come down and help out at the Welcome Center and sort of be little ambassadors. They were willing to dress in period costume, and we had a mother and a daughter and two other individuals who at separate times we had them working in shifts and going out and greeting people and handing out our fans for Jour de Fête. And I know that some of you had seen these before, but I had a couple extra, so I thought I would bring them down and just share them with you in case you hadn't seen these. Again, this is something new that we tried. I wanted to have some sort of a social media promo that would tie in the visitor experience directly to drive traffic to our social media site during the Jour de Fête, and it was very successful in doing that. We had a spike in both visits and in new likes during Jour de Fête, and we had a total of I think 87 people who were eligible for a contest that we did for a deluxe bed and breakfast stay in St. Genevieve. And now, since we've drawn for the contest, the friends of those people who were the winners are now going and liking. So it's not just that we had extra activity on the social media site during Jour de Fête, it has continued as a result of this. And so I want to thank the people that participated in helping us with that social media promo, and also those volunteers who dressed in period costume and helped us hand out the fans and Jour de Fête information. I think it was a nice touch, and it seemed to me like a lot of people said that it made them think of Jour de Fête in the past when, when there were like little things given out and little nice touches done here and there. And so anything that we can do to reinforce the hospitality of our community, I think is a good thing. Also, in terms of,
If I might, I think this was a terrific idea. I really liked it. Where did they come from?
from my budget. You
Somebody,
mean, who did I order them from? A local
Both.
vendor.
so you ordered them locally and they came out of you had budget for that, something like that?
Yes.
Okay, and it doesn't mean that we have to not open the doors or anything like that?
No,
Okay.
although I did think after I did this, I'm going to ask them if we can print both sides, and maybe next year I'll offer, ad space, sort of like a little program sponsor. If you want to be on the Jour de Fête fan for the Facebook promo, maybe we'll sell some spaces on the back of it and recoup the costs from that.
I don't know how many you had printed, but I think I saw 10,000 of them.
I'm
they're-
glad there was that impression.
Yeah.
We were giving them out so fast. The volunteers who came and dressed up put them into baskets, and they had to cover up the baskets just to get a block away from the Welcome Center before they were mobbed.
Yeah.
So they would sort of, tippy-toe down the street and get, down to Moses Austin or get up to Merchant Street or go down Main Street before they started handing them out, because as soon as they uncovered those baskets, people were like, oh, please, can we have one? Of course, it was hot. Might not have been so popular if it was cold and rainy. I don't know. They could have been little
It would have
umbrellas,
been a lot more
maybe.
popular if it would have been a typical 95
Right.
day.
Right. So actually what we did on Saturday, I was concerned that we wouldn't have any left for people who might come to Jour de Fête only on one day and only be here on Sunday. So we had to hold some back from Saturday to Sunday just to have some additional. I think we probably could have had twice as many as we had and still give them all the way. So I'm glad you had the impression that
Oh,
they were
yeah.
everywhere.
I did.
And I did you order? 600.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I think the other suggestion was maybe just have a list of our signature events on the
If I don't
backside.
sell the ad space, maybe
Yeah.
that would
Something we
work.
could do, just a little reminder of things coming up.
So on that note, as a reminder of things coming up, this is a larger-than-life example of a little space holder ad that we ran in, for instance, Feasts magazine in St. Louis. I blew it up to full 8.5 by 11 so that I could post this on the new You Are Here maps, which also got installed. I'm sure everyone realizes they got installed 2 days before Jour de Fête. So those are in place at the courthouse lawn and also down at the Main Street Park. So I'm going to pass this around, speaking of calendar of events. And also, in terms of our communications program, I'm also writing more articles and submitting these whenever I submit a paid ad, and asking them to, consider us as, a loyal advertiser in their publication, if they would consider giving us some free editorial space. And so I've been writing like crazy, and you might have seen some of those. One of them was highlighted in the Southern Illinois newspapers that we did prior to Jour de Fête with the round robin advertising. They were really good about carrying it, and they carried it several weeks in a row. And then I'm just going to circulate one that I did just last week, and this one was sent to the St. Louis markets, and it said an hour away but a world apart, and then the hour away was from St. Louis. And then I also sent it to Southern Illinois, an hour away but a world apart, and with directions coming from Cape Girardeau. So I'm going to send that around. But the one in St. Louis is going to be in the fall day trips. It's a pull-out section in the Webster Kirkwood Times, which is kind of a sweet spot for our advertising, and also the South County Times. And oh, Bev, I didn't see you back there. So Bev and I have been talking a lot lately about how we might gain the best advantage for our limited dollars, both the round robin advertising program and the tourism advertising program. So I'm trying to, to leverage any spending that we do have and make that go as far as possible, and also get some free publicity, some free coverage anytime that I can. So leverage our marketing budgets. So speaking of budget, I had a first meeting last week with the Board of Aldermen in a work session to discuss budget categories, and I started out, several people of the Tourism Advisory Council had met with me previous to this, and we talked about, sometimes it's not readily understood that tourism is an investment that has a return on investment. And so we kind of talked about that and how important it would be to make sure that all of our new aldermen, for instance, would understand that, and maybe even a little brush up for some of the existing aldermen. So I started out the discussions in that way. I went to the Missouri, the state site for tourism, and just pulled some statistics, which I know we all know these things, but it was just very interesting to note that of the SIC codes that we always, the standard industrial codes that we always track, our 17 codes here in St. Genevieve, the city. The state also tracks these same codes across the state, and they track it back to the county level. And in the county of St. Genevieve, they anticipate that in 2012, which was the last year that data was available, it was nearly $12 million in those SIC codes and sales in the state, or in the county of St. Genevieve. And they have a formula that they use to translate those dollars into jobs that would be dependent on that industry. In this case, that industry would be all those directly related to or tangent to tourism, and they calculate that at 444 jobs in the county of St. Genevieve. So that was how we started our discussions, and frankly, I was a little surprised. I wouldn't have thought that we would have had 12 million gross in the county, or that we would have had 444 jobs tied to tourism in St. Genevieve County. But I think that's just a statement on how important this really is, not just for our city, but our county and our destination. So we talked about priorities and the ability to make cuts. I made it clear that the marketing funds and the personnel expenses were my highest priorities to be able to grow the program, to be able to stabilize the program and to grow it. I had to have that at a minimum. And then we talked about also the funds that are made available to our program through the state co-op, and I tried to help them understand a little better about all the state co-op dollars, 49,000. As this committee knows intimately, only half of that has to come from our local budget, and the other half we spend it. It's reimbursed. So because we spend it at the city level, it shows up on a separate line item for them as a capital outlay, the whole 49,000, because they do in fact have to lay it out, but the 25 is not shown on that same page. So with Sue's help, I was able to pull together all of the revenue line items onto one page to really help them understand, okay, this is the budget for tourism in St. Genevieve, but these are the line items that are revenues coming in to help offset some of those categories. So we also talked about that, and I feel good about the direction of the budget, and we'll be continuing to, sort of massage it, but we had some good discussions on that last week, I think.
When's your next review with the alderman?
I haven't been told that yet. And also I wanted to point out that thanks to the Tourism Tax Commission, we had, there were about $34,500 Part of that was earmarked for some special projects like the billboards for next year, and also a television campaign with Channel 4 for next year. And I have followed up with them, by the way, Mike, just in case you're wondering, I've talked with them about how to proceed with that campaign. And there were also $7,500 in discretionary funds that were provided by, that were pledged by the Tourism Tax Commission. So I was very gratified at the confidence by the Tourism Tax Commission in setting those funds aside, and they certainly will be very important to our overall marketing program for tourism. And so visitor statistics and tax revenues, those are the PowerPoint slides that did not come up on here, but I printed, because it came up so small on the PowerPoint that you could hardly see it. So I printed the pages about the revenues, and I'll take just a minute to pass those around. I apologize, it is still pretty small type, but there's a lot of columns to get onto the page. In fact, so small it's difficult to see without one's glasses. So you can see that these are, again, this is information that we extrapolate from various parts of the city's budget. Let me give our visitors back here.
I got one.
Oh, did you get
I
one of
get, I
these?
have both.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you very much. So, as you can see, we have tour revenue and expense. For the year to date, we're running a little over $2,000 ahead on the revenues over the expenses for that. And then...
I have a question, I'm
yes.
sorry. Is tour an abbreviation for tourism in that sense, or is that tours like tours?
Literally tours, yes. People on buses,
Passports,
yes.
and the revenue is higher because on adult passports, we have $1 of the $15 goes to the tourism department.
So
And this is one of the areas where Sandra, if you look at those little numbers behind there, the expenses show up in her budget, the revenues show up in the general revenue account. And that's one of the disconnects that she was talking about when you look at the total budget.
And to elaborate on what Bob said about the passports, people probably know this, but we sell the majority of the passports from the Welcome Center. You can buy them at other locations, but I would say 95+% are sold down at the Welcome Center. And so we then handle all the administration of the tracking of you know, which site needs to get how much of that $15 passport. And then we issue the call for a check to be cut to those organizations, and then a check is cut to, for instance, the Bolduc or the Felix Valley or the Guibord or the museum. So for that, we get $1, and that's what Bob was alluding to in terms of the revenues over the expenses.
Do many people still just buy a ticket at the door for one house museum?
They do that sometimes, not as often. If they want to see the houses, I would say a good percentage of the time, like probably over 80% of the time, when we explain the passport program to them and how much they save over their walk-up fees, they usually go for the passport. There's also the benefit that sometimes there's a concern that I can't get around to see all these houses in this museum today. But we explain to them that this does not expire. Maybe you see 3 out of 5 today, and you still have a ticket for 2 more venues that you can see when you come to St. Genevieve next time, which is a benefit for us as well, because then they not only invest in the passport, but they come back to see us another time, we hope. So.
We try to also, as Sandra said, sell them at Guibord and Felix Valley, because we do have people that come in, they see the flags up at Guibord and start there, and it's really inconvenient to say,
go down to the Welcome Center. So we worked out a system that the other two of the houses can sell them, or if the museum has somebody come in, they can just send them up to Gibor or Felix Valley, and Olduk just sends them over to the Welcome Center.
So, so this will show you where we are year-to-date, like on our overall, and Kathy, this goes to your point earlier, the primary fund for marketing through the tourism department is budgeted at $30,000, and we were at about $28,000 as of the end of July. And the TTC is Tourism Tax Commission, revenue and expenses.
It's interesting, they show both of those in your budget in the same account, Mike.
Yes, everything shows up on yours on one page, and maybe it's because ours are separate pages and all these different accounts, but
You can see one thing, we've spent $41,700 on the state co-op, and we've gotten about $17,000 back. There's always a lag because you have to have the canceled check, you have to have the tear sheet, and I think there's one other thing. So you would probably be submitting at the end of August the last bill
yes,
for the state to get that remaining money back from the state.
yes. And that's a very large report. If you've worked on grants before, you know the year-end report is always the biggie.
So do you see any area where you're going to overspend this year?
I did projections to develop my budget request. I actually did projections on everything, and I feel like we're pretty close. And there's a couple of areas where I might be within a couple $100, so I'm going to really try to watch those, and you know, might have to wait until after the fiscal year to take care of a couple of things I'd like to do. So that is especially the metrics related to revenues and expenses. If, with your indulgence, I can maybe email the PowerPoint to people that has the visitor center metrics on it. I don't think that I printed that one out.
You know, I think
Oh, I did. I just sent it. Okay, I can tell you that.
Can we just get copies of that?
Sure.
Can you make copies?
Sure. Oh. Thank you, Carl. Then I'll wait on that one. I'll just go on to save some time. I'll just go on. We have a group tour coming in tomorrow. This is another in a series of the American Queen groups that have been coming. Again, this group will land in Chester at their riverboat docking facilities. And just as when you go on any cruise anywhere in the world, you have a choice of shore excursions that you can sign up for. We are one of those choices. So they can get on a bus and come to St. Genevieve and see what we have to offer here, and then ride their bus back to Chester. It would really be wonderful if sometime in the future we could host these riverboats here in St. Genevieve and not have to rely on being one of the tours offered through Chester.
In Chester,
No, go ahead.
in Chester, their tour excursions, they have 4 buses that follow the boat up and down the river. They use 3 of them in Chester to do a step-on, step-off tour, so people can start, and there's 5 or 6 different places. They have 1 bus that is just dedicated to coming to St. Genevieve, and it's a special fee for that, for the people.
It's one of their premium tours. Do you know how many are on that tour? They usually run between 40 and 45. So I emailed the downtown merchants about that, just to give them a heads up that we have another one of those buses coming tomorrow.
Can I pursue that while Carla's passing out the papers
Yes.
for just a minute? And maybe everybody knows the answer to this question or questions, except for me, and if that's the case, I apologize. In last month's minutes, it said that you've been meeting with the American Queen people. what do you present to them? What alternatives are they given as to what they can do if they get on the bus to come to St. Genevieve?
It's a predefined tour that they sign up for. Like if you're a passenger on the riverboat,
Where did the information come for the pre-designed tour that they can sign up for?
from their
you?
tour management company. They contacted our department back in January and February and said, what do you have to offer? They decided what they wanted to choose from that selection, and then they put their premium tour together. We had to make some adjustments to it because they didn't allow enough transit time from Chester to St. Genevieve, and we had to have the first ever bus crossing for a tour group on the ferry, you know, those kinds of things.
Are they
What-
going to get to take the ferry again?
Yes,
Okay, good
they kept
deal.
that.
Actually, they're going to take it twice tomorrow.
All right.
Because the bridge at St. Mary's is out, they'll be going,
Or
they'll be
Chester.
coming here and going back.
Is it Chester that it's out, or is it?
It's actually the bridge between St. Mary's and McBride Bottoms,
Okay.
that one-lane bridge.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
everybody hates, yeah.
Kathy, last year, I know we had worked on doing some brainstorming of things we could offer tour buses and small groups, and I think Stephanie had discussed some of those ideas with American Queen, and as they went down through the list, they picked what they wanted to do.
What are they going to do tomorrow?
They will,
I called the visitor center, and unfortunately, the person who was on wasn't able to give me as much information as I had questions for, so I'm asking again. When are they coming? How many people, and what are we gonna be able to see them do?
this will be the same itinerary that this American Queen boat has taken each time. They come to the Welcome Center, they have their step-on guide, they are given an overview via the movie.
Are they disabled people again?
Oh, no.
These are, remember the Australians?
Yeah,
They were American Queen.
okay.
Okay, so it's a broad mix of people who are on this cruise up and down the Mississippi River. They could be from America, they could be from any ports of call or airports around the world. So this is entirely, you know, a shore excursion that they have signed up for, a prepackaged tour, so it's the same thing each time. They are coming to the Welcome Center, they're doing a movie, they are doing a step-on guide and, you know, doing a downtown tour. They are...
But not getting off the bus.
No, this is,
I'm not to that point. They will be
Okay.
shopping between 11 and 12 tomorrow. I know that's what you're getting at. They're doing an organ concert in the Catholic Church. And
What? I'm sorry.
An organ concert in the Catholic Church. That was something that they asked for.
How in the world would a tour group from another city or cities ask about that?
it was on the list of things that we could offer.
This isn't Vatican City. Who came up with that? I'm sorry. That's crazy. All the things, so they're buying passports, and how many homes are they going to?
No, I think they just buy tickets to the Bolduc.
Right. So they're
And
touring...
they don't, it's included in the price, they don't have to go there, they can go shopping, they walk around town. The step-on tour and the church thing, they want to tour the church also. And that lasts an hour, and then they have an hour that they either walk around town or go to the Bolduc, and then they're back on the bus. I mean, we've even had to cut it short because they wanted to stop at the Popeye statue on their way back. With tour buses, you have to be very flexible.
So nobody's making anything on it. The Bolduc House is getting one ticket per person.
Yes, and they have time to
Unless
shop.
if they find the stores, they have an hour to walk around.
Yes.
I think they want more time too, because the ones that I have talked to, they just,
Oh,
Wish
I
they
think
had
they
We
would
would
love
like
it.
to
Yeah,
have them for
just
more
to-
time too, but
because they don't
they
have
they
time.
decide the schedule. Unfortunately, they have to drive all the way up to, on the east side, and then come in, across the ferry. And that's, the first trip, they had to wait 25 minutes for the ferry because of things going on. They have very set schedules, and they have to be back at the boat at a certain time because the boat's leaving.
I'm
And-
I'm sorry to belabor it, and I promise to stop, but how is this helping us financially? They're not going to a winery. They may or may not trip and fall in my store. The city isn't making anything because they aren't buying a passport. They're only going to one house. Who's making money on this?
Well, during the time that they have available to them to shop, they have the potential to spend dollars in our community. And certainly, we hope that they have enough of a positive experience that they would like to come back.
Where are they from?
Well, obviously, the people from Australia, that's going to be hard.
I understand, but that's not tomorrow, Australia.
Not necessarily, no.
Do we
But-
know where they're from?
No. These are the guests of the American Queen. These are not our guests.
And we can't ask in advance, is it a bunch of veterans from World War II? Or, I mean, you have no clue who's coming?
No. I did, however, after the first trip, I suggested to them that if they wanted to eliminate the ferry ride, that they could come straight to St. Genevieve and have more time, because it seemed to me that a lot of their guests would have liked more time in St. Genevieve. So their response was that they wanted to keep the ferry tour, and I said, well, if you'd like to increase the length of time in St. Genevieve, we'd love to have you do that, and I'd even be willing to work with them. So I've tried, to push those buttons, like, can we offer you, some freebies or perks around town to get them around? But their focus is on, getting them back to the boat so that they can stay on their itinerary, which goes from Memphis to St. Louis and points beyond.
So nobody makes anything on this. Theoretically, there's nothing cut and dried that anybody but the Bolduc is going to get 50 tickets bought.
Well, I wouldn't agree with that. I would say that we have made sure that they have time allowed to shop, and I have tried to maximize the time that their feet are actually on the ground. And my message is that we would love to have them come back to St. Genevieve. If they fell in love with it tomorrow, that they would come back. And I think that's my job, your job, the job of all the shops, to make sure that they are as hospitable to these people as we can be, so that they themselves or their nieces or nephews or, people are very connected. If they have a good experience in St. Genevieve, it's likely going to drive business our way.
Is there any money that's paid to the church?
No, as a step-on tour guide, I donate all my money to the...
You get money?
It's part of the fee, but it usually, I spend about 3 hours doing one of these things, and I donate all of my money back to either the church or the foundation.
She was asking about the church for the organ.
Al donates his money too.
And it's entirely up to them, and this is their time. This would be like if we
Al
asked
has
you
a
to be their
better
walk-around guide.
agent than Maroon 5, okay? If he got on that radar for this tour company.
I think maybe what Kathy's getting at is, in the future, when their American Queen's presented with a list of activities, do we have influence and maybe only offer some
Yeah, alternatives.
We weren't, I don't think anybody was here except Stephanie when she presented that, but there was a list of 9 or 10 things that we can offer tour groups. They choose what they want.
I guess my question is, can we take that off the list and do something a little more disseminating into the community?
Well,
Or at
I think
least,
our
for
church
goodness
is
sake, take them to
beautiful
the
and
Lutheran
tourists want to
church.
see it.
To your point, I think at the end of the season, this is the first season for American Queen, they're back in business again. We try to sit down with them and see if we can work something else out that maybe gets them.
Maybe an 8-hour tour. I mean, that would be the ideal, that they have such a positive experience that this is where they want to not only come back, but stay longer when they bring them back. Offer an expanded deluxe tour next time.
Last question. Do we work at all with any of the tour bus companies, Trailways, anybody like that who's also does touring around, or just with the boat people?
No, we work with a number of group tour organizers. And that's one of the questions that we always ask them, is to allow time for shopping and how much can you squeeze in. I mean, I just had a conversation this afternoon with, and I hate to get into, the nitty gritty, but I had a conversation this afternoon with a tour packager from near Kansas City. And she wanted to come over here and get to the Welcome Center at 9 and see, 5 things with her group and have lunch and do something else on the way out of town. And I encouraged her to consider allowing time to shop. And she also, get this, she thought that she wanted to go and see the Missouri mines display over by, Park Hills before they got here. I said, well, your people are going to get up pretty early in the morning. Turns out they were from St. Louis, but still they're going to get to
yeah.
St. Genevieve by 9 a.m. I said, you're going to be out there at Park Hills by about 7 in the morning. So it's entirely what they think is going to appeal to their audience. And absolutely, our interest and thrust is to try to maximize time on the ground and time in the shops and time anywhere that brings money into the attractions in St. Genevieve. But ultimately, it's their tour.
But I
It
don't know
would be
if
like
they're-
if you went to, I'm sorry.
I don't know if they're hearing their people then, because we're all hearing from them that they want more time here. So I keep telling them,
Yes.
you need to tell the bus or you need to tell the tour guides that you want more time here.
Yes.
There
I
are
hear
tour,
that
there
too.
are tour buses that would come into town and just have lunch
Right,
and leave. I
right.
mean, we need to try to sell them things, but as Sandra said, they're the ultimate decision maker as to what they want to see.
It's just like if you go to Washington DC and you take a step on, like a Gray Line tour of Washington DC, you're going to see the 6 things in a row, and I'll guarantee you those buses don't stop for shopping. You're going to see the 6 things in a row that they want you to see of the highlights of DC tour. We're trying to insert into that itinerary time for shopping. I mean, it'd be ideal if they could spend a couple of hours shopping. But you're not going to find many tour guides that will agree that 2 hours of downtime is what's optimal for their groups. And I completely agree that it helps to encourage them to voice that interest back to their tour providers. Because as Bob said, this is their first year, getting reestablished. So if they have a good experience, maybe they will make it longer next time. But I hear you, Kathy. I mean, I completely, that's, without sounding like a broken record, I approach it from 4 different directions during the conversation about how valuable it is to your passengers to have time to explore these shops and galleries and so on while they're here.
Okay, thank you.
So Carla made copies for us of the visitor comparisons. And as you can see, we finally, on the year-to-date figure there between 2012 and 2013, we got over the hump, where right now we are ahead of last year by 2% on the year-to-date figure. If you look at the bottom, the group tour visitors between July 2012 and July 2013, I don't know why, but there were no adult or student groups last year in 2012, and we haven't had any students obviously during the summer, but we've had 171 on groups this summer. So that's, obviously that's 171% change year over year.
That's 171 individuals or 171 tours?
That's 171 individuals.
Thank you.
And so obviously that's a number that we just want to grow. We want to grow the student tours, we want to grow the individual tours, because people who come here on a highlights tour are more likely to come back than if they haven't seen St. Genevieve. So those are the highlights about the visitor metrics. And I think the other things I'll probably cover later in the report.
The quarterly metrics, I guess that's what was on your, like lodging and downtown shops.
The sales and shops
Yeah.
comparisons, yeah.
Okay, anything else, any other questions right now, Sandra? If not, I'll entertain any comments or discussions from the general public.
The public was reading.
Yeah, do you have any?
The public was busy reading.
Yeah.
Where's Mr. Public tonight?
I would like to compliment Bev on her initiative to do the round-robin advertising and area newspapers and such to get our exposure and get people that can get here in a day and spend the whole day and get home, and possibly some of them spending the night.
For your comment from Peanut County, this is for Sandra. Saw this before I left the office. Lady from Aiken, South Carolina, sent me that.
About a wedding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Saw that.
Okay.
A little article about Chalmette.
Bev has been doing a wonderful job with putting together that round robin. You did a splendid, splendid job, and it's not done yet, and she's really working hard. I appreciate it.
Well, let's just hope those numbers go up with everything that everybody's doing.
Yeah, I think when you look at the lodging numbers and restaurants and sales, they are down from last year, and we've got to figure out and put things in place that do turn that around. Let's move into old business, visitor guide reprint. Jan?
Well, I'm sorry, I was expecting to have a proof today, but still working on it.
Done rewrites, and Kim's doing the final.
The assembly, the layout assembly is being done now.
Okay.
Should be tomorrow, I guess.
And then we'll go out for printing and be able to do that yet this year.
Well, there's still proofing.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, once we get it back from her?
Yeah.
Okay.
But with 6 weeks to go, I don't think that should be a problem. Even if it took a really long time to proof, I don't think that should be a problem. And it might take a long time to proof.
Did we include the new winery in that?
Yes.
Okay.
Watertown?
Yeah, Watertown.
Yes.
Okay. Development of the 2014 calendar. This is something we've talked about so we can get everything on there. Just a suggestion, we have a form that people fill out to get on the calendar. I think we ought to physically send one of those to each of the signature event and other event people and have them fill it out by November. And it may not have all the details on there, but some of the basic stuff, so that we can get that on the calendar in December, January, and February, when tourism is generally down. We should have a little more time to put it on calendars. So
I've been talking with them each individually, but I'll certainly make that initiative to send it in writing.
yeah, I think that would we just need to keep getting it out there and set a deadline for them to get back if you want us to work with you. And I know that's one of the things you talked about in our meeting on the budget, is working a little more closely with event groups.
Yes.
Okay, anything else on the calendar issue?
No.
We can put pictures on there, I believe, if I remember right. I think,
You're talking about the calendar on the website?
right, the Google Calendar. Commemoration at Flood Park. That was a great event for those of you that weren't there. It was a very emotional event, and I give a lot of credit to the Downtown Renewal Group and Sandra for helping them organize that and putting that all together. It was quite a session there to get some of the people that were so much involved in fighting the flood to talk and remember some of that. We also, Frank Myers had given us some old VHS tapes of a lot of some of the shows, the National Geo show, and some of the things from the flood area, some of the things on television. We've got those all converted now to DVDs, and Sandra showed some of those during
Sugar Fest weekend down
Yeah.
at the Welcome Center, which was another change I forgot to mention, but was unique to the flood commemoration.
Just one of the things Sandra did do down there, when they do have large tour groups in there, you really couldn't hear the movie very well, and we had some speakers from the old system there, and I think you might have mentioned that Don Rapp came in and rewired all of that so that it works much better.
Yes, it's a night and day difference.
About how many people attended Bill's showing?
Well, I counted actual people at the River Gauge Park announcement, and there were about 65 people there. At Bill's, it's a 700-plus seat auditorium, and I didn't count people, but I'm going to estimate it was probably 450 people. It was a really nice turnout.
Jan, do you have kind of, I know there's a fundraising effort that's going to be initiated to accomplish the park. I know you've got a tentative design. Is there kind of a timetable laid out?
No, because it's a pretty ambitious architectural plan. You know, it may look simple, but the thing about the way the park is being designed is that it can be done incrementally. So as we raise funds, we will just continue to build out the plan. It's hard it's too early to estimate what the final cost is going to be, but just since last week, we've already raised over $2,000. So,
Are there going to be some articles in the paper about about raising that?
yeah.
Okay. That's people stop at that place and look at that. Sometimes I've seen 2 cars backed up there, traffic jam on Main Street. Tourism volunteers, I know you had something in the paper, you got some response for that?
Yes, we used tourism volunteers over the Jour de Fête weekend. And for anyone who might be listening, I'm very interested in continuing to have volunteers step forward. I made sure to send out thank you notes to all my volunteers that we had, and would love to have lots of people who are, people, and enjoy greeting and being little diplomats for the Welcome Center. Could use people at any time. So I'd love to have a long list.
A few years ago, we did that, called it docent training, and we could repeat parts of that. We did a session on French dress. We did something on just a little bit of French. We did things on the history of St. Genevieve. And for volunteers, we could repeat some of that without going through all the stuff that we went through in that training.
Do you still have the materials?
I have the stuff that was locally developed. That was done by a consultant who had copyrighted her material, but which is not uncommon. But we do have some of that, yes.
And we have some books, Sandra, from whoever did the hospitality training with us, that we actually purchased, and so we can give those to you. There's how to be hospitable in a small town kind of thing. It's pretty good. We have several of them. I can get those to you.
We should think about just a short training, not the ones we did lasted several weeks, one day a week or 3 or 4 weeks, but we could put that all into one day and just hit the highlights.
Yeah, we didn't get any of the material from any of those consultants. They all were copyrighted, but they did give us some material to use. Okay.
Well, I think when we discussed where you wanted to go with this is possibly on weekends, on Saturdays, starting out, maybe having people in costume around town. I think that's something we're going to have to continue to work on and develop. And, it could be just a 6-hour or a 3-hour session for a couple of people.
As soon as I have a more response, and I'll continue to run on our social media and in the paper to try to get some people who, I know there's people out there who are interested because they'll tell me in passing, but I need to actually get them to sign up for the program.
Even on St. Genevieve Community Access Television, I think they filmed a little lecture that Judy Gerlach did on colonial dress for at the foundation annual meeting. So if you want to learn a little bit about colonial dress, you can just watch Judy talk about some of that.
That's a good idea.
Okay, the 2014 budget, you did cover that.
I might have a little bit more to add to that. One, and it has to do with, I didn't touch on this, but operational update. I have repaired as much as I could of the things that were in disrepair at the Welcome Center, internal and external. And in looking at next year's budget, I knew that I would not have budget for things like furniture. So if you haven't been down there recently, please pop in. I've had the sofas that, if you've been down there for a meeting with me recently, you know what shape the sofas are in. So they have been recovered. Janice Baumeister, a local person who is very creative and very good with that kind of thing, has recovered the large sofa with a really nice patterned fabric, and then a little bit on the two smaller sofas. So it's made a world of difference in terms of how acceptable it looks. And so the last small sofa got done today, so I'm really excited about that. You know, it'd be nice in a couple of years to be able to buy some new furniture, but I think we could stretch this out at least a year, if maybe not 18 months, so excited about that.
I think you also had the benches painted. They were in pretty bad shape. Bushes trimmed up, so it's looking better.
Yeah, we're coming along. We still have to, and the improvements to lighting, the note there is for Jour de Fête weekend, I literally put those kind of closet lights that you push the button and it turns on. I can't afford to keep buying those, but I'm in the process of getting quotes for converting over to an LED system instead of those high-intensity bulbs that are in there now, because we just seem to burn through them so quickly. And an LED bulb costs about $20. One of those high-intensity ones costs about $5, but I swear I think we probably use 5 or 6 bulbs to every, the LED ones are supposed to last longer. So I've asked for some samples and some pricing on that, and we will have light before it starts to get dark early. Because I can't believe even on a cloudy day how dark it looks in there with the minimal amount of lighting that there is. So we've got to continue to make progress on that front.
Could you share with us a little bit? We talked at the financial meeting the other day about some of your thoughts on marketing approach for this coming year. We have print media, we have television, we have radio, we have social media, we have close stuff, we have beyond 50 miles, maybe to 100 miles, and then we have Paducah, Memphis, Canada kind of things. But you just share with us a little bit some of those thoughts you shared with us.
Certainly. We do have all of those things, and especially in terms of the particular segments of the marketing outreach, like the television, the billboards, and so on. The most important thing about all of that is that it is consistent, and that our branding and imaging and messaging is consistent across all of those, so that it is truly an integrated marketing and communications program. And then secondarily, I've received a lot of input about how important it is to support our signature events during the year, and so I've set aside a plan for each one of those events to be able to support them. Some of them have some advertising dollars, some have very little, and so I want to, and have already begun to take steps even in this fiscal year to tie in with their budgets and try to help them optimize the funds that they have available, and augment that whenever possible. So better integration across our multimedia efforts, and better support, or at least some support to each one of the signature events during the year. And then also I'm finding programs that we can tie into. Anytime that we can take $1 in budget and turn it into $2, that's a good thing. And so obviously we're doing that with the co-op grant to the extent that we can, but I've recently learned about search engine optimization and SEO program that the state has available. And again, it's you put in some budget and they match it with funds, and so it doubles your spend ability for marketing. And I've committed to the state that we will include this in part of our multimedia marketing program for FY14, and I've set aside some dollars for that. Just last Friday, I think it was, because the Board of Aldermen meeting was last Thursday night, so it was last Thursday, we received a letter from the state offering the ability to participate in a new type of marketing program that the state is tying in with the U.S. Department of Commerce and also with the U.S. Travel Association on taking Missouri's destinations and marketing them to visitors, especially Canadian, European, and Japanese. And of course, we have in the past had a high degree of appeal to not only European visitors, maybe tracing genealogy or coming over here to trace the French colonial or German settlements, but also to Canadians in general and French Canadians in particular, because of our obvious French colonial links there. And so I sent a letter back in response to that, saying that we would be very interested in maybe leveraging some of our funds against those. And so I don't know what's going to be available through that program or how much we might be able to leverage, but that would be something that would definitely benefit us, because we have a number of international guests. Even I was just surprised, even in my first week on the job, that we had several people that came in from France and several from Quebec. And so obviously we are known to them, and if we can expand that, this could be a good thing for us in terms of, reaching beyond our, say, 75-mile radius of driving distance to St. Genevieve. A lot of people come to maybe just St. Louis and then maybe include St. Genevieve on a day or 2 days as part of their overall vacation itinerary. So very exciting to find out about that. And again, as I said earlier, the Tourism Tax Commission has designated some funds for 2014 that will allow us to develop a television campaign.
Can we
Yes.
break that down for them?
I'm sorry?
Can we break it down for them, what we've designated?
That's
for-
kind of what we were talking about down below.
Okay.
I think, if you'll just maybe explain what you put forward
Well,
at the
what-
last meeting.
You want me to do that now?
Yeah.
Okay. What we did was we looked at our budget, how much we had left this year, how much we had obligated this year, and what the overage amount would be. And we have quite a bit of money, and we decided that, the commissioners, that it's not wise to sit on the money, to spend the money. So the first thing we did was we allocated $200 for the Feast magazine, for our share of what we had said to Bev we would try and help out with. Then the next thing we did was we allocated $500 to the Belleville News-Democrat for their fall issue, similar to this one, which was in the spring. They do it twice a year, and as you all know, Dina said that she sold 70 tickets right away, so we don't get good response directly from any of our advertising, but that showed us, and that was the May issue before the show started. So we allocated $500 for that, so that's a total of $700. We still have the billboards that will come due in February and March, and we voted to continue the 2 billboards, which is about $11,000. Then we looked around for what else we could do to help the winter season, and we had a proposal by Channel 4 in St. Louis. It's $15,850. It's 148 commercials. They also do a special series like they did for
Living St. Louis
Living
segment,
St. Louis.
yes.
They come down and do some filming. We turned all this over to Sandra because it's not our thing, and so those advertisements will start December, January, February, March, and a little bit of April. And so the thing is that we're trying to advertise the off-season so that we can get people to come in. Then, of course, we'll still have money left over, and perhaps we'll go back into the fall issue. Then we said, okay, we still have some funds left, and we need some discretionary time for her. She's got her money obligated through the grants and through other things, so we gave her $7,500 to do. Now, she has to bring it back to the commission and tell us what she's doing with it, but it's actually a discretionary amount of $7,500 to try and boost the tourism, whatever it needs a shot in the arm. That comes to $335,050, which is probably the largest that we've ever allocated. Let's see what happens with it.
May I say something?
Sure.
That is just so fantastic to do that during those winter months. You'll remember last year, the comment was made, there are just sort of several shops not open, why advertise for those shops not being open? That is so bad, because there are a lot of us that are open every day, along with the B&Bs, just because one of our historic homes has no heat during that time. That's not a reason to close down the town. And I just applaud the commission for doing that during that time. Really do.
Well, one of the things I might, thank you. One of the things I might add is that we've given permission to use our signs for what they call hang-ons or banners. Jurdafet took advantage of it. The Heritage Day is taking advantage of it. It's at no cost to us. We as the contractee has to sign off on it, but it's no big deal because they pay for it themselves.
What is it, about $250?
It's about $250 per sign. It can actually be less as if you're taking down, say, the Jurdafet sign and putting up the Heritage Days, or taking down Heritage Days and putting up, there's a month and a half or two in between, and putting up the Christmas walk. So you don't pay quite as much. You just pay for the banner, and as they're taking one down, they're putting up the next one.
Who's putting them up and taking them down?
They are. We don't do that.
The billboard people?
The billboard people do it. You have to work with them for them to design the sign. Our only stipulation is it could be at the top, it could be at the bottom, or it can partially cover over the Bolduc house, but not the rest of it, because it would take away from sending people into the town. It's hard to tell whether that works or not, but it does. Jurdafet took both signs. It can't hurt. If you have an event and you want to spend a minimal amount of money to get 50,000 people a day going up and down the highway, somebody's got to see it. So that's our second thing that we've allowed.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Okay.
From an anecdotal point of view, I can share that we have people all the time who say that they saw those billboards. And they might have, maybe they were already aware of St. Genevieve, maybe they had plans, but if they have time on their hands, they're coming downtown as a result of that, which is...
I hear that from a lot of the shops and especially the tour houses. I can truthfully tell you, I don't know about Jan, but very seldom does a bed and breakfast take someone in after a certain hour at night. I know I talked to Gary, he doesn't answer his phone after like 8 o'clock. I don't answer mine after 9 o'clock. I never take anyone in. When the phone rang this morning at 3:01, I don't answer it. Yes, and that happens at least. In the morning, at least. Well, Jan will tell you that. I don't answer it. And it was someone on a cell phone and they're looking for a place to stay. I don't do that to my other guests. They don't understand a bed and breakfast. When you go to bed at night, you're pretty much prepared for how many people you're going to have for breakfast and what you have to do. If you start taking in people like they do at the Microtel, you'll have no time to sleep. I mean, you don't have much time now, but then you would have none. And it's just hard on the other guests. So we just don't answer the phone.
Okay. Anything else, Sandra?
I'm trying to think of any times that I've called a line in the middle of the night, and I probably never thought that it would be ringing at someone, I usually think that after hours, you're just going to automatically get an office with a answering machine, and so I wonder how many times I've woken someone up in the middle of the night.
Any other old business before the committee? Now, let's move on to new business, new or upcoming events for September.
Actually, was copied. The last page. These were the events that were on the events calendar on visitstgen.com. So not a ton going on in September. And I really couldn't find anything else or think of anything else. But we should have some more. In October, there'll be a couple more things on there with World Heritage Day and the Spirit Reunion. And is there a route then in
Not till
October?
November.
It's November, okay.
You didn't put the 61-mile-yard sale on here, Beth.
Next year.
I'm just thinking.
One of the things I know Sandra and I talked about, and we talked about as a committee, right, or when we were reviewing the budgets, is maybe doing some brainstorming on some smaller events that we could fill in some of these months when we don't have a lot scheduled. We have a lot of opportunities around to do. I mean, we've talked about bird walks, we've talked about hiking, what you call it, walkabout days or something. When you look at what St. James County has in terms of trails, that if we could figure out how to put that all together for just a weekend or something, to get people to come in. We want events that don't take oodles and oodles of planning and requirements because people get burnt out doing that. But if we could get smaller events and try to fill in some of these dates, I think it would be beneficial. And so again, I think we wanted to do some more brainstorming with the group.
Would that be something that everyone on the group is interested in? Or maybe I should put it, if you're interested in brainstorming that particular topic, would you raise your hand? Okay. Because I don't want to have the whole group brainstorming on it if it's not something that you're excited about. So if you're excited about it, brainstorming small events. So I saw Jan, Kathy, Dina, Bob. Okay. You also?
Yeah. Any event? I mean, are you specifically talking about the hiking?
No,
it's
any
just
event that you
new
would
stuff
want
that we
brainstorm.
can,
Okay.
could maybe implement.
Thank you.
Because I've talked to Luann Miller several times. She's willing to bring her horses in and do horse-drawn carriage tour rides. Obviously, she can't do it for free, so it would have to be something that we planned in advance, and people would have to pay for it, and then we'd have to have someone who would actually want to do the guided tour. But I think that would be really neat for people to do that through town, and we just don't know
Certainly
how
would
to.
add an ambiance.
We don't know how to get it going and make it worth her while too.
Yeah.
'Cause, you know.
Well, that should be something that we could brainstorm on. I've got a whole list. I might throw a few things out there, you might just shoot it down, but that's okay. We'll come out with more than we have now.
Okay, anything else on new business? Moving on, anything from the electronic committee at this point?
I wanted to say that I have been getting out a little bit ahead of my committee, but I tried to resolve that today by sending out an email. Beth and Dina and Steph Greminger are on the electronic committee, and so I sent out an email to ask them about availability to do even just a conference call so that we can talk about a mobile optimized site. And I've talked with a potential provider for that, and I have some ideas on, I've been looking at a lot of mobile optimized sites and checking them out on various equipment and so on, and it's not rocket science, it's just something that we'll have to figure out what we want on there and go ahead and get it done. So that's hopefully going to be moving forward soon. And on the website, we've just been updating the website on an as-needed basis. It's pretty well updated in terms of the directory and.
Yeah, guys, as you're all on the website, if you see things that need to be changed, just feed them to Sandra, and she'll feed them to Chuck to get them updated, because things happen around here.
Mm-hmm.
People in and out. Okay, print media, anything other than the brochure? Tourism development, I think it's really this brainstorming again. And we've all kind of, I guess the resource committee was really our little group that looked at your budget. What's your schedule? Do you have to go before the alderman 2 more times or 1 more time? Because they have to have it done by the end of
September.
Yeah, but they have to vote on it probably the last meeting for sure.
I asked about the process at the meeting last week, and I was told that they would let me know. But I think that I'm going probably at least 1 more time. So.
Are those in working sessions or are they in?
Working sessions,
Okay.
yes.
You might want to let us know if you're going in for a working session, or we might come for
Sure,
support.
sure. It went pretty well. I mean, it was, obviously they have their limitations and concerns, but I felt like it was pretty much of a dynamic give and take of information.
Okay. Is there anything else before the committee or council? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. So move, Mike.
Second.
Was that you, Kathy?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Hi, thank you for watching Channel 798.
Thank you for watching Channel 7 and 98.
Hi, thank you very much for watching Channel 798.